So what is up, guys? Brendan Suter back, and today I am here with NFL Week, Warren Moon, Cam Newton, Jamar Chase, and Marquez Callaway. It is Week 1 predictions. We are finally back with NFL predictions, maybe the wildest offseason we've ever seen, but now it comes back with predictions to get to. Now, if you're looking to watch a certain matchup, timestamps are in the description box below, so click on that matchup you want to see. Anyways, got 16 matches to get to, so without further ado, let's get this video started. So we are starting off with our very first match of the season, Thursday Night Football between the Buffalo Bills and the reigning Super Bowl champs in the LA Rams. So starting out with the Buffalo Bills, right now I think you guys are the team to be. I think they're right now the favorite to win the Super Bowl, and honestly, I could really see that because you have an absolutely loaded roster, the most balanced team in the NFL because Josh Allen was an absolute beast last year. Anyone who doubted him, obviously got silenced after how he did against the Patriots and the Chiefs in the playoffs. The rushing attack, it's okay. Devin Singletary, James Cook, and Zach Moss. Honestly, one of those three could be their number one back, and wouldn't really matter who. That's definitely the weakest part of the offense, but the receiving core is really where it's at, with mainly highlighted by Stephon Diggs and Dawson Knox. He made a great offseason pickup in Jamison Crowder, but also don't be sleeping on the little guys. Gabriel Davis was an absolute beast in the playoffs last year, and Isaiah McKenzie, he's also low-key a dog. Offensive line is still pretty strong, but it's really, once again, in the defense, as especially that secondary. You know, once you get Tre'Davious White back, that's going to just completely revamp the secondary. And, of course, picking up Von Miller in the offseason was just absolutely critical. Sure, his first couple of years is going to be good, but maybe later down the road might fall apart, but that's okay. And then on with the Rams. Really, Matthew Stafford coming to you guys proved that, one, Jared Goff was holding this team back, and two, Matthew Stafford is an absolute beast. You know, last year he threw for 4,886 yards, 41 touchdowns, and 17 picks. And just like the Bills, I see the running game as the weak point in the offense. You know, Darrell Henderson Jr., he's okay. And Cam Akers, he came off an ACL tear and was just horrible in the playoffs. So if he can bounce back, that's going to be a huge boost to this Rams offense. But it's really in the receiving core. Cooper Kupp arguably had the best receiving season in NFL history and won Super Bowl MVP. And honestly, he deserves it. Van Jefferson's an okay receiver, but I do really like the pickup in Allen Robinson because he's going to definitely help you guys out because he was getting held back by Matt Nagy and Justin Fields, who was behind a terrible, terrible offensive line. Defense is still pretty solid, especially with the pickup of Bobby Wagner. Anyways, currently the Bills are 2.5-point favorites to win this one. And yeah, I'm going to say that they win and cover the spread. And now you have our very first 1 o'clock matchup between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Detroit Lions. Starting off with the Eagles last year, you know, you made the playoffs, which was pretty good. Let's talk about it. So Jalen Hurts is going to be your QB going in this year. You know, not exactly amazing with the arm, but it's really in the ground attack because once the Eagles shifted to a ground attack last year, just like primarily running the ball, they were nearly unstoppable, but that's because they never really passed. But it doesn't really matter because whether it's Jalen Hurts, Miles Sanders, Kenneth Gainwell, or Boston Scott, they got the job done. And honestly, I do like the receiving core a little bit this year. Obviously, Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert are great receivers. You guys got rid of J.J. Arcega-Whiteside and Jalen Reagor, and you trade to bring in A.J. Brown, which I think is going to be a huge, huge boost to the offense. And the defense still is very solid and a great cornerback duo in Darius Slay and James Bradbury. But once again, this really all comes down to Jalen Hurts. You know, I'm not like once the ground game gets shut down, you guys got nothing. So I honestly am not 100% sold on Jalen Hurts, though. And then the Lions, all of a sudden, people are saying you're good. I mean, I think you're an okay team. Still, once again, I don't think Jared Goff can be the quarterback that leads your team, but still got a solid running attack in DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams. But I really like the receiving core this year. Obviously, Amon-Ra St. Brown broke out to end the season last year. TJ Hawkinson, great tight end. A good trade for DJ Chark and trading for Jameson Williams and a couple of other guys like Khalif Raymond and Josh Reynolds. So overall, it's a solid receiving core. I'm not a huge fan of the defense, but I really do like the draft of Aiden Hutchinson because I think that's a huge boost to the defensive line. Anyways, Eagles are 7-point favorites to win this one, but I'm going to say that the Lions pull off the upset here. And now you have our very next matchup, a classic AFC South rivalry between the Houston Texans and the Indianapolis Colts. Starting off with the Colts last year, you guys were a disappointment because, look, you were on the cusp of making the playoffs, and all you had to do was beat the Jacksonville Jaguars. And you lost. It was so bad that Carson Wentz got shipped out of town, and now in comes Matt Ryan. Now, look, I think Matt Ryan is definitely going to do a lot better with the Colts than he did with the Falcons because last year, outside of Kyle Pitts and Cordero Patterson, he had nothing, had a horrible offensive line, and also had targets like Russell Gage and Olamide Zaccheaus. That doesn't really scream a good team, but he's going to be under a much better system this time. Obviously, the rushing attack is the focal point of the offense, whether it's Jonathan Taylor or Naheem Hines, but mainly Jonathan Taylor because he was a dog last year. And obviously the receivers are okay, mainly Michael Pittman Jr. Hopefully he's going to have a big breakout season. And the defense this year is still pretty solid, obviously highlighted by Shaquille Leonard, which he used to be Darius Leonard, but he goes by Shaquille now. DeForest Buckner, Kenny Moore is a good corner, and they definitely made a good pickup in Stephon Gilmore. So I'm really hoping this team does well, but all eyes are under Frank Reich this year. This is a make-or-break season for him. Playoffs or bust, or he's out the door. And then the Houston Texans, it's official. Deshaun Watson has been traded to the Cleveland Browns, so the Deshaun Watson era is over. But in comes Davis Mills, but he did not have a bad rookie season last year, considering how late he was drafted and considering what weapons he had. Obviously, I really like Dameon Pierce as a running back this year, but so are a lot of people who are playing fantasy football are super high on Dameon Pierce. And honestly, the only real good receiver that you have is Brandon Cooks, always such an underrated guy. And that's pretty much it. The offensive line is still a mess, and the defense is still pretty bad, despite drafting Derek Stingley Jr. There's just a lot wrong with the Texans, but this rebuild hopefully can go well. Colts are 7-point favorites to win this one, and they're going to win and cover the spread. And now you have our very next matchup between the Cleveland Browns and the Carolina Panthers. This is such a storied match. Obviously, Baker Mayfield was cast aside by the Browns, ultimately betrayed, goes to the Panthers, and now it's revenge time. Let's start with the Cleveland Browns. Obviously, the big highlight of the offseason was trading for Deshaun Watson. But once again, this guy is covered in so much controversy, and you guaranteed him so much money, which was, in my opinion, very foolish. And he's serving an 11-game suspension, so currently you're going to have to rely on Jacoby Brissett as your quarterback. I really don't think he can be that guy, although I do love Jacoby Brissett as a person. I met the guy. Excellent dude. But really, it's all in the rushing attack, whether it's Nick Chubb or Kareem Hunt. They're going to have to carry this offense over the next couple of weeks. Although I did really like the Amari Cooper trade. He was a big reason why Dak Prescott became a good quarterback. And I think trading like a fourth to get him, that's an absolute steal. But other than him, you just have like Donovan Peoples-Jones and David Njoku, who's so inconsistent. So a lot of question marks on offense. But still, the offensive line is amazing, and the defense is respectable. And then we get to the Carolina Panthers. Obviously, last year was a complete mess because you had Cam Newton, P.J. Walker, and Sam Darnold as your quarterbacks, and it was just a mess. So you bring in Baker Mayfield. I know there's a lot of hate surrounding this guy, but honestly, when he went out with his injury in Week 2 against the Texans last year, he should not have come back to play. He should not have been on the field. So, honestly, I really think he can do a little bit better with the Panthers, even though he's going to have a worse offensive line. But he'll have some good weapons. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey, if healthy, is an absolute beast. Chuba Hubbard, decent running back, but I really like the receivers in DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson. And honestly, that's pretty much it. And anyways, Panthers are 2-point favorites to win this one. Will Baker Mayfield get his revenge? Yes, he will, as they win and cover the spread. And now you have our very next matchup between the San Francisco 49ers and the Chicago Bears. Starting off with the 49ers, came so close to making another Super Bowl, but you ultimately fell short. Obviously, the narrative of the offseason is that Jimmy Garoppolo is now the backup, and it is now Trey Lance season. I really like Trey Lance's upside, but can he do well in his first year? Only time will tell anyways, but the rushing attack is pretty solid, whether it's Elijah Mitchell or Jeff Wilson Jr. Once again, Kyle Shanahan can run a running back by committee with this Niners team, and anyone's going to work. It doesn't matter who. But really, it's in the receiving game. Like Deebo Samuel was an absolute beast last year, basically invented the wide back. Him and Cordero Patterson invented that position. We also got some solid guys like Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, still one of the best tight ends in the league, and Kyle Juszczyk, still the best fullback in the league, which doesn't mean much, but he's worth mentioning. And once again, the offensive line is still an absolute unit, especially with Trent Williams, and the defense is still pretty good. So I'm high on this 49ers team doing well this season. And then the Chicago Bears, you finally fired Matt Nagy, and it is Justin Fields' season now. Justin Fields in his first season wasn't exactly amazing, but to be fair, he was under Matt Nagy and a horrific offensive line. He was basically out to die. So hopefully this year we can see some more progress from Justin Fields, and rushing game is okay, whether it's David Montgomery or Khalil Herbert. But the receiving game definitely took a huge downgrade as Allen Robinson is no longer on the team. So it's really Darnell Mooney season. And last year he did super well. But other than that, you got like Cole Kmet and Byron Pringle, and that's pretty much it. And the defense, it's okay, but definitely lost a couple of pieces. But the offensive line is still going to be an absolute train wreck. 49ers are 7-point favorites to win this one. I'm going to say that they win, but don't cover the spread. I'm going to say Fields keeps this one close. And now you have our very next matchup between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Washington Commanders. I may still call them I'm honestly still just going to call them the football team. I like that way better than Commanders. Anyway, starting off with the Jaguars. Last year was just an absolute wreck, but you were winners of back-to-back tank bowls as you had 2 straight years with the first overall pick. Starting off with Trevor Lawrence. Honestly, his rookie season was nothing special, but to be honest, Urban Meyer was just an absolute disaster, and the team around him was just an absolute mess. So hopefully we see some improvements from him going into year 2. Obviously, the rushing attack, James Robinson went out late in the season, so really all eyes are on Travis Etienne because they spent a first-rounder on him in the 2021 draft, so expectations are going to be pretty high. But the receiving core, look, just because you have a lot of cap space doesn't really mean that you should spend it all, because the signing of Christian Kirk, I think, was foolish because the amount of money you gave him started the domino effect of receivers begging for more money, which led to guys like Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams being elsewhere this season. But you also have guys like Marvin Jones Jr. and Evan Ingram. Still, the offensive line is still a wreck, and the defense is still not great, and really it just comes down to Shad Khan as your owner. Nothing's really going to change unless he goes. And then the Washington football team, the Taylor Heineke experiment turned out to be a failure. He was overrated after his near playoff upset over Tom Brady. Last year just wasn't a great year for him, but honestly, once again, the football team's organization is a mess. But Antonio Gibson as your running back, he's okay. Same with J.D. McKissick. They're kind of a nice 1-2 punch. Receiving game, it's in Terry McLaurin, so hopefully he can have a good season. But the part I haven't talked about was trading for Carson Wentz. Now, once again, you chose to take on his entire contract, which I really question now. Carson Wentz, he has a high ceiling. His ceiling could be one of the best QBs in the league, like a top 10 QB, but his floor is super low. And since he's so injury-prone, quarterbacks playing on one of the most injury-prone fields, I just don't think this is going to work out. Commanders, though, are 2.5-point favorites to win this one, but I'm going to say that they win and cover the spread. And now you have our very next matchup between the New England Patriots and the Miami Dolphins, a classic AFC East rivalry. Starting off with the Patriots, this offseason question marks were raised. Is Bill Belichick starting to lose control with some of the moves that he was making? So let's start off with Mac Jones. He was good in his rookie campaign last year, but once again, I think he really benefited off being in the Bill Belichick system. The offense is not really a strong point. Outside of the running game, whether it's Damian Harris, Ramondre Stevenson, or Brandon Bolden, but the receiving game leaves a lot to be desired. Now, sure, trading for Devontae Parker was an okay move, but having Jacoby Myers and Nelson Aguilar as receivers just doesn't scream optimism. Offensive line is decent, but really the biggest piece you lost on that defense was J.C. Jackson. That is going to be a huge, huge blow to that secondary, and you really did not make any big moves in the offseason. So who knows? Maybe the Patriots run's coming to an end. And then with the Dolphins, last year came short in the playoffs, and obviously all eyes are on Tua Tagovailoa this year. Can he lead the Dolphins to something? But I'm really not sure if he's that guy. Once again, the arm strength is absolutely terrible. The run game is kind of meh, but I did really like the trade for Tyreek Hill. Sure, it was pretty pricey, but once again, I think Tyreek Hill is the most game-changing receiver in the game. One pass to him can completely change the game. Think of Jet Chip Wasp in Super Bowl 54. The Chiefs were losing, but that shot, Jet Chip Wasp, completely changed the game. Chiefs and Bills in the divisional round, that touchdown that Tyreek Hill had late in the fourth quarter, that was just a short pass, and he was able to take it to the house. But he also got some other good receivers like Mike Gesicki, Jalen Waddle, and Cedric Wilson. The offensive line is still not great, but picking up Terron Armstead is good for you guys. And the defense is still a decent unit, but I just don't think Tua can lead you guys anywhere. But the Dolphins are 3-point favorites to win this one. And considering that Bill Belichick's number one kryptonite is playing in Miami, give me the Dolphins that they win and cover the spread. And now you have our very next matchup, a classic AFC North rivalry between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cincinnati Bengals. Starting off with the Steelers, the narrative of the offseason is that Ben Roethlisberger has retired. The Roethlisberger era is over, so in comes Mitch Trubisky and drafted Kenny Pickett. So, yeah, no, this offense is just absolute garbage. Najee Harris, he's a good running back. And the receiving game is okay, like Deontay Johnson, Mapletron, Pat Freiermuth. Losing Juju Smith-Schuster is definitely going to hurt. But really, it's really a hot mess because the offensive line is garbage. So once again, a guy like Ben Roethlisberger could definitely work with that, but I'm not really sure if Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett can really perform under that offensive line. But the defense is still one of the better units in the league, so that's really the only thing you have going on for you. But yeah, no, Mitch Trubisky is going to be your starter, so how will he do? Not really high on Mitch Trubisky. And then the Bengals, so close to winning the Super Bowl last year, but you just fell short. Joe Burrow, obviously coming off his ACL injury, has an excellent season, but I do think he is a slight bit overrated. I still think Justin Herbert is a better quarterback, but still Joe Burrow is that guy for you guys. But you also have strong rushing game with Joe Mixon and Sanjay Parai, but it's in that receiving core. In my opinion, I think it's the best young receiving core in the game. If it's not the best, it's definitely the best young receiving core, whether that's Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, or Tyler Boyd. Obviously, the offensive line was a huge liability for you guys in the past couple of years, and you did a good job at fixing it in the offseason, which definitely helps. The defense is still an okay unit, but the secondary is still kind of questionable, mainly with Eli Apple as one of your corners. But anyways, the Bengals are 6.5-point favorites to win this one. I'm going to say that they win, but don't cover the spread. Actually, no, they cover the spread on this one. And now you have our very next matchup between the Baltimore Ravens and the New York Jets. Starting off with the Ravens, honestly, the narrative of last year was injuries just completely killed your season. You lost your entire secondary and basically your entire running game, and you came just short of the playoffs. Lamar Jackson, in my opinion, I think he's the most overhated QB in the league, but I still think he is an absolute beast. The rush game is decent. Definitely getting J.K. Dobbins back for the season is going to be good, but I still see a little bit of an issue with the receiving core. Rashad Bateman didn't get much of a chance last year, but Mark Andrews is still a great tight end. Offensive line is pretty solid, and the defense, if it's healthy, it's going to be an absolute unit, but you lost the entire defense last year, so obviously this defense is going to be much better, and adding Marcus Williams is a great move, and as a Saints fan, it hurts to see him go, but I thank you, Marcus Williams, for what you did in New Orleans. I forgive you for the Minneapolis Miracle. I really do, and once again, Lamar Jackson, I know a lot of people say, oh, he's a running back, he's not a quarterback, but doesn't really have anyone to throw to. Outside of Mark Andrews, he's never really had that great true wide receiver one, so quit hating on the guy because I still think he's an absolute beast. And then the New York Jets. Zach Wilson, he's going to be missing the first 3 games of the season, so in comes the elite Joe Flacco. There's nothing elite about this guy, but the run game's okay, especially Breece Hall. He's a big name that is popping up, and in terms of receiving, you guys got guys like Elijah Moore and Corey Davis, which are decent receivers. It's not amazing, but not terrible at the same time. Offensive line is kind of meh, and the defense is okay, but not really much else to say because without Zach Wilson, I really think this team goes nowhere. And even with Zach Wilson, I still don't think this team is fully capable of making the playoffs. Ravens are 7-point favorites to win this one, and yeah, they're going to be fully healthy, so they win and cover the spread and destroy Joe Flacco. And now you have our very next matchup between my boys in the New Orleans Saints and the Atlanta Falcons. Starting off with the Saints, last year we came so close to making the playoffs, but just like the Ravens, injuries just completely decimated us. But this time, the injuries decimated our offense. Because look, last year, Jameis Winston, in the short time that he was our QB, I think he was pretty solid. Because once again, we really gave him no one to throw to. Our receiving core was Marquez Callaway, Traquan Smith, and Deontay Harris. I love those guys, but they are not wide receiver ones. But it's in the rushing attack with Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram. But once again, the receiving core has just revamped itself. Michael Thomas is going to be coming back, and when healthy, absolute beast. Chris Olave from the draft, absolutely love him. And Jarvis Landry. That's a whole lot more respectable than the receiving core we had last year. Offensive line is it's okay, missing Trevor Penning. That's going to be bad for the left tackle position, but we still got Ryan Ramczyk. So that's pretty good. And the defense is still an absolute unit. Even though we lost Malcolm Jenkins and Marcus Williams in the offseason, we made up for it with Marcus May and Tyrann Mathieu, a.k.a. the Honey Badger. And then the front seven, that's still an absolute unit. So once again, I know a lot of people are going to sleep on the Saints, but I am super high on them. Even if I wasn't a Saints fan, I'd still be very high on these guys. And then the Falcons, it's over. Matt Ryan's gone, so in comes in Marcus Mariota as your quarterback. This team's just going to be an absolute disaster. Really, the only good guys you have are Cordero Patterson and Kyle Pitts, because Calvin Ridley is serving a suspension for gambling. It's full season, which a lot of people are absolutely livid about. And other receivers are guys like Olamide Zaccheaus. There's really nothing else I could say. Offensive line, not amazing. The defense, not great. So this is ultimately the Atlanta Falcons are the number one contender for the Tank Bowl. Anyways, Saints are 5.5-point favorites to win this one. I said that we win and cover the spread. And now you have our very first 4 o'clock matchup between the Arizona Cardinals and the Kansas City Chiefs. Starting off with the Chiefs, I think a lot of heads are starting to turn because the biggest headline of the offseason was trading away Tyreek Hill as the Chiefs were unable to reach a contract extension with him. So obviously Patrick Mahomes, a lot of eyes are on him. Now, I still think he's the best QB in the league, but losing Tyreek Hill, I still think is a big loss for these guys. The rushing attack, that's not really what you guys are known for. So hopefully Clyde Edwards-Helaire can carry you guys. But with the receiving core, once again, you still have Travis Kelce, the best tight end in the league, and he's definitely going to have an insane workload this season. And in terms of receiving, like, it's okay. You picked up Juju Smith-Schuster and MVS, which they're okay receivers. Maybe they'll do well under Patrick Mahomes. Once again, losing Tyreek Hill is still a huge loss. Offensive line is pretty solid, but the defense, it's boom or bust. Either it's going to be insanely good or it's going to be insanely bad. So there's really no consistency with this defense. And then the Arizona Cardinals, once again, following with Cliff Kingsbury on how he's been as a coach. Awesome start to the season with a huge collapse to end the season. Even though he made the playoffs, the wildcard game was absolutely atrocious. Kyler Murray, I'm not sure if he can really be a leader because, once again, his contract extension had a clause where he has to do 4 hours of game study a week without multitasking because he's so obsessed with Call of Duty. But Kyler Murray, I still think, is a pretty solid quarterback. And the rushing attack, James Conner was an absolute beast last year, especially in the red zone. Can he replicate that again? I'm honestly not sure. I think that was maybe a little bit unsustainable what he did last year. But the receiving game, adding Hollywood Brown is decent. You're going to be missing DeAndre Hopkins for the first 6 games. But having Hollywood Brown, Rondale Moore, and AJ Green, it's okay. The offensive line is still pretty solid. But the defense, not amazing. The front 7 is okay, but the secondary, I still have many questions about. Chiefs are 5.5-point favorites to win this one. I think this is going to be an absolute gun show, but I'm going to say the Cardinals pull off the upset. And now you have our very next matchup between the New York Giants and the Tennessee Titans. Starting off with the Giants, Joe Judge is gone, and so is Dave Gettleman. So is this a new era for the Giants? Is it going to be good? I'm honestly not sure. Coming in is Brian Dable to be head coach, but I still really like him. I think he's a solid head coaching hire. Daniel Jones, a lot of eyes are on him, but I still don't really think he can be that guy. Also, all eyes are going to be on Saquon Barkley because his last couple of seasons have been completely riddled with injuries. If he's healthy, he's still one of the best running backs in the game, but once again, that's the big key part, if. And the receiving core, obviously last year was a rough year for you guys because you had Kadarius Toney and Kenny Golladay didn't even score a single touchdown, but having those two, Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton, I still think it's a solid receiving core. Offensive line, not great, but the defense definitely made a couple of good moves in the offseason. So maybe there could be some upside from the New York Giants, but I ultimately just don't believe it. And then the Tennessee Titans, last year proved to me that Ryan Tannehill cannot be that guy moving forward because he got flat out exposed in the playoffs by the Cincinnati Bengals. And honestly, there's really not much I can really hype you guys up for. Derrick Henry, dude had an insane workload last year. Missed half the season, so honestly, coming back from injury, can he be the same running back that he once was? I'm honestly not sure. And I think losing A.J. Brown was a huge loss for your offense because right now you got Robert Woods as a receiver. I think he's okay. If he can be like how he was with the Rams in 2020, that's a huge help. And Treylon Burks, a lot of questions came out drafting him, and he's getting a lot of hate for how he did in preseason. This is so similar to the storyline of Jamar Chase, but can he repeat that? Honestly, I don't think so. Offensive line is still pretty solid, and the defense is still really strong. But once again, Ryan Tannehill is holding this team back from their full potential. Titans are 5.5-point favorites to win this one. I'm going to say that they win, but don't cover the spread. And now you have our very next matchup, a classic NFC North rivalry between the Green Bay Packers and the Minnesota Vikings. Starting off with the Packers, I think a lot of panic is starting to set in because narrative of the offseason was trading away Devontae Adams, as thanks to Christian Kirk, Devontae wanted more money. They couldn't reach an agreement, and he requested trade, and he's gone. Thank you, Jacksonville. Thank you for ruining the wide receiver market. But anyways, Aaron Rodgers, I still think he's an absolute beast because once again, even when he doesn't have, he's kind of known for not having like the best receivers, but he makes it work. But can he really make it work with Allen Lazard, Sammy Watkins, and Randall Cobb? Only time will tell. But really the highlight on the offense right now is the rushing attack with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, proven to be one of the best 1-2 punches in the NFL. Offensive line is solid, and the defense, did face a lot of injuries last year, but still performed well. So a fully healthy Packers defense, I think, would be completely lethal this year. So I'm still decently high on Green Bay, although the receiving game I'm still not sold on, but I think Aaron Rodgers can make it work because it's Aaron Rodgers. And then with the Vikings, Mike Zimmer is finally gone, so hopefully things can turn up well with the Vikings. Honestly, I'm not sure. So Kirk Cousins actually had a pretty solid year last year. Obviously, there's a lot of people that hate him Now, I've said this many times. I think he's a problem on the team, but not the main problem. But really, the running back, the offense is absolutely insane. Dalvin Cook, Alex Mattinson, great 1-2 punch in the running game, because if Cook goes out, Mattinson can just make up for that. And the receiving game, once again, is absolutely insane with Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, but mainly Justin Jefferson breaking out like crazy. And KJ Osborne, he's a solid wide receiver 3. Offensive line is meh, and the defense is okay, but I do really like the signing of Zadarius Smith, so that really spites out the Green Bay Packers, but I'm still just not quite sure if Kirk Cousins can be that guy. I still think he's a good quarterback, but I just don't think he's going to be good enough to lead you to a Super Bowl. Packers are 2-point favorites to win this one. I'm going to say that they win and cover the spread. And now you have our very next matchup, a classic AFC West rivalry between the Las Vegas Raiders and the Los Angeles Chargers. Starting off with the Raiders, man, the offseason was a huge success for you guys, mainly bringing in Davante Adams. That is going to be a huge boost to this receiving game, because here's who you got. So Derek Carr had a great season last year, kind of proving all the doubters wrong, saying that he's a good quarterback. And the rush game, it's okay with Josh Jacobs. Not going to have Kenyon Drake anymore, but that's okay. I think he was just hogging Josh Jacobs' carries. But really, the receiving game, Davante Adams, Hunter Renfrow, and Darren Waller. Those three, and Darren Waller, if he's healthy, is an absolute beast. Those three altogether could form one of the most electric wide receiver cores in this NFL. The offensive line is kind of meh. Not a huge fan of it. And the defense, great signing with Chandler Jones. So I really like the front seven. But the secondary, I still find to be super shaky. But the one thing I think that's going to hold you back this year is hiring Josh McDaniels. I don't know what was wrong with Rich Bisaccia. I thought he did a great job last year, considering what the Raiders went through, that he took them to the playoffs. I think Rich Bisaccia should have stayed, but he's gone, and in comes in Josh McDaniels. I don't love that move. I do not like that a single bit. And then the LA Chargers came so close to the playoffs last year. All you had to do was just take the tie. But no, you didn't. But it's okay, because Justin Herbert, arguably one of the best QBs in the NFL. I still think he's better than Joe Burrow. Was an absolute beast last year, and the offense is still absolutely insane. Whether it's Austin Eckler at running back, Keenan Allen, and Mike Williams at receiving, and picking up Gerald Everett, I think that's going to be okay for the tight end position. But the defense took a huge change, whether that was trading for Khalil Mack or signing J.C. Jackson. I think the Chargers, they're just in an all-in phase right now, and even in this bloodbath of an AFC West, I still think that they're the team to be. I love what the Chargers have done this offseason, and I am super excited to see what they have this season. Chargers are 2-point favorites to win this one, so I'm going to say that they tie. Just kidding, no. Chargers win and cover the spread. And now you have our Sunday Night Football matchup between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Dallas Cowboys. Starting off with the Buccaneers, highlight of the offseason was Tom Brady retiring, watching the NFC completely collapse and say, you know what, let's come back. He unretires. So obviously the big asset for this team is going to be the offense. Tom Brady was absolutely ridiculous last year, and Leonard Fournette, he was solid running back. Hopefully he still can do well this year. Once again, the receiving core is still very strong with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, just adding Julio Jones and Russell Gage. So once again, I think this is still an electric receiving core, but I'm really concerned with the offensive line, whether that's losing Ali Marpet or Ryan Jensen to IR. I think the interior line is going to have some big struggles this year. And then with the defense, it's really a strong front seven, but a pretty shaky secondary. So only time will tell to see how well that secondary can do. And then with the Cowboys, I actually have some concerns about you guys going for the season, mainly losing Amari Cooper. Now look, Dak Prescott in 2017 was terrible. And 2018, he was heading down that same path. But once Amari Cooper came in, he completely changed Dak Prescott as a quarterback. And now that he's gone, I think that's really going to hurt you guys in offense. But Dak Prescott, he's still a solid quarterback, but I think he's going to be worse without Amari Cooper. Rushing game, it's between Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard, even though Tony Pollard may take over for Elliott. And the receiving core has taken a downgrade, obviously losing Amari Cooper, but also losing Cedric Wilson as Michael Gallup still out with his injury. So really it's all going to be in CeeDee Lamb and Dalton Schultz. And the defense, kind of like the Bucs, a good front seven, but a pretty shaky secondary. And of course, all eyes are on Trayvon Diggs because he can get interceptions like it's nothing, but he's also notorious for getting absolutely scorched. Buccaneers are 2.5-point favorites to win this one. I'm going to say that they win and cover the spread. And now you have our Monday Night Football matchup, a rematch of Super Bowl 48 between the Denver Broncos and the Seattle Seahawks. Starting off with the Broncos, obviously the narrative of the past few seasons is that it's a good team, but being held back by their quarterback. because, Drew Lock, Teddy Bridgewater, and like years past, they just could never find that QB, but trading for Russell Wilson in a big all-in maneuver, I think Russell Wilson is going to be a huge, huge upgrade. He's going to be in a lot better system with a better offensive line and a better rushing game. Talking about the rushing game, that's really where it's at with Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon. But he's definitely going to miss having DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett as his wide receivers. But once again, offensive line is solid, and the defense is a much better upgrade than what he had in Seattle last year. So this year, the Broncos, really, you guys got to make the playoffs. There's no excuses. And then the Seattle Seahawks, it's sad to see, but Russell Wilson is finally gone. And in comes Geno Smith and Drew Lock as your quarterbacks. I just don't really think that's going to work out. The rush game is okay with Rashad Penny, but once he gets hurt, in comes Kenneth Walker. I still think he's solid backup running back, but I feel like he's going to do well this year because I know Rashad Penny's going to go out. But the receiving game is still pretty strong, whether it's DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, or Noah Fant. But once again, there's still so many holes in this team, whether it's the offensive line or the defense. Both are just an absolute train wreck. And I was shocked that Pete Carroll didn't bite the dust last year, but I think he's going to bite the dust this year. So Russell Wilson making his return to Seattle, he's going to get cheers. If you're going to boo Russell Wilson, please don't. Come on. He did everything for the Seahawks team. He was the glue that held this team together. And now that he's gone, the Seahawks are in a whole lot of trouble. But Broncos are 6.5-point favorites to win this one. I'm going to say that they win and cover the spread. And before I go to the outro, I want to give you my seeding prediction for the season, starting off with the AFC number 1 seed, giving that to Buffalo easily. They're the best. I think they're the best team in the NFL. Number 2 seed, I'm going to give that to the LA Chargers. I'm really excited about this team's upside. 3 seed, going to give it to Baltimore. Once again, if they're fully healthy this year, they're going to be an absolute beast. 4 seed, tough call, but I'm going to give it to the Colts because I just trust them a little bit more than I trust Ryan Tannehill and the Titans. 5th seed goes to Cincy, 6th seed to Kansas City, and then the 7th seed right to the Denver Broncos. Then we have the NFC. That one's a little bit harder to predict, but I'm going to say the Bucs come out with a number 1 seed, Rams come out with a 2, Packers come out with a 3, Eagles come out with a 4, and then for the wild cards, 49ers take the wild card, the Saints get the 6th seed, and then the Cowboys squeak in with the 7th seed. On to the outro. That is going to wrap up my video for today. Thank you guys all so much for watching. If you want to see my postseason prediction from last year, click right over here. If you like this video, drop a like, subscribe to my channel by clicking here or the button down below. Comment down below what your thoughts were, who's going to win this week, who's your lock of the week, upset of the week, is your favorite team going to win, and your seeding predictions. Follow me on all my social medias, Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok, @BrendanSuter. Thank you all for watching. Have a great day. The Who Dat Nation, in Jay's gear, though, is out.